Hey there, and thank you for joining GamePoints, our weekly get-together when we talk about the past week in gaming news. I am, as always, your host, Stephen Brown. Joining me today is David Smith. How you doing, David?
How's it going?
Not bad. I'd like to say hey to D Jackson out in chat. Looks like you're already joining us. Same with DJ Cyanide. How you doing? Thanks for joining us tonight. Interesting show. A lot of the big news happened last week of E3, so this is going to be a little bit more fine-tuned. We're going to be talking about some of the new consoles coming out, focus a little bit on Scorpio, a bit on VR, get into some No Man's Sky and Twitch lawsuit debacles, rather.
No, I like
I
the
like
backles.
debacles. I like debacles.
Good.
Uh, but first, let's start off with the VR. I think that's a good place to start.
I like it. We can
Uh,
talk about the jerks or the nice guys.
We'll talk about the nice guys first, specifically
All right.
Vive and Valve and Gabe Newell and all that good stuff. Today's first story is going to be a Reddit user by the name of El Polo Diablo 187. Great Reddit name. Emailed Gabe Newell asking questions about the Vive. And Gabe Newell is known to actually just respond to random people coming in. And this is the email that was posted up here. In this, El Polo Diablo asked, Mr. Newell, I don't know if you heard about Oculus trying to buy itself exclusively into Serious Sam, but did Valve ever consider to acquire any exclusivity for the Vive? Gabe Newell responded because he's a bro, and the first sentence says it all right there. We don't think exclusives are a good idea for customers or developers. What do you think, David?
I like it. Well, what I like is his a triple whammy argument that goes into it, because obviously this is a whole new thing. VR is something that we want to have happen, or at least some people do. And it's a pretty big barrier to entry, especially if they start making VR into consoles immediately right off the bat, because then you have to worry about if you're going to publish a game or develop a game, what are you going to make it for? Are you going
Exactly.
to make it for Vive? Or are you going to make it for Oculus? What are you going to do? So the idea of having just an open platform where someone can develop a VR game, and the fact that I think they even talk about Steam having like some kind of assistance program, right? That's where he kind of goes with that.
Yeah,
Is
it goes on to talk about how they're going to have a program set up to where Steam will actually pay you to make something not exclusive, essentially. David.
Yeah, basically.
I didn't know if you were looking something up there or not. Couldn't tell. So yeah, Steam is all about, hey, we want it to be available to everyone at every time on whatever system they play, because we think that is conducive to furthering this goal of VR. It's good for the market, it's good for the consumer, and in the end, good for business. Oculus, on the other hand, says the exact opposite. In fact, they had an interview with some members from Ars Technica, and I'll go ahead and bring up that page here right now. Oculus defends its efforts to secure VR exclusives for the Rift. During this whole article, and you can go to, I'll put the links down at the bottom of YouTube. During the article, Oculus developers essentially claim, quote, that developers, quote, normally wouldn't be able to go and make these titles as big and immersive and deep as we want them to. So essentially what the people at Oculus are saying is, hey, we are giving these guys money to make something that go beyond their scope, and in return, it's exclusive to us. We are funding the bigger VR games. It's not going to be the Steam Greenlight stuff that you see around here that gets crowdfunded and go. They're hoping that by infusing these smaller developers with that Facebook money, because remember, Facebook owns Oculus now,
Yep.
that they'll be able to make bigger and greater things, and then that is going to be better for the consumer. But the drawback is, since they paid for it, it's going to be on their platform.
Well, see, I'm glad you mentioned Facebook and the fact that there's a whole bunch of money behind Oculus right now, because this decision sounds more like a shareholder decision to me than people that like playing games.
Well, if they're
A bit,
publishing...
but I mean, I get it, because they also mention, I mean, it's not just that they're stuck on the exclusives and they're only going to have the option that we'll give you money if you make it for only the Oculus. But I think they also mentioned there's like a 90-day exclusive option where you could get a little bit of money from Oculus as long as you give them exclusive rights for the first 90 days. And then you can go ahead and, allow your game to be on other platforms, VR, whatever.
No, for sure. You have two different companies taking two different publishing styles, and I think they're both right to their own degree. Oculus has every right to say, hey, we're putting the money up, we're taking the majority of the risk, we get to say, hey, it's on our platform to recoup that expense. Valve is simply saying, fucking do whatever you want. We're not going to ask for any money, but we're not necessarily going to give you any money back in return. Both are valid business options. I don't hold begrudge either one of these two companies for doing it that way. In the end, my take is I'm going to go with Vive on this fight rather than Oculus, because Vive is more open with that. They are more willing to let me do what I want with it. And when it comes down to it, that choice is enough to keep me from buying into Facebook, Oculus side of things, because there's just more choice for me as a consumer on the Vive in that case. As counter as that runs, because Oculus is getting exclusives, that might seem counterintuitive, but I want to go with the company that is giving me more freedom to do what I want.
Well, there's also the idea that isn't the Vive the more powerful system of the two currently right now?
Yeah, I'm talking based solely on this specific topic, but if you want to talk hardware specs, Vive hands down beats the Rift, in my opinion. Like, just doesn't even come close. Hey, Disco King, welcome to the chat. Thanks for joining us and watching us. Between the two, which one would you go with if you were going to pick between the two?
If I had the money, I'd get the Vive.
Yeah, I think
I don't have the money.
I know I would, flat out.
I was all about Oculus until, well, honestly, Facebook bought them. And then I got really turned off just because of what Facebook is and how they like to deal with data, especially personal data. And I know everyone takes all of our data all the time and we're all screwed, but I don't know.
Well,
it's just something's weird.
Facebook's also having a bit of a censorship problem where they're getting slapped with claims of them deleting and banning people for conservative posts that are non-offensive, but they just run politically afoul of Silicon Valley's mindset.
Well, also remember when the Revive project first launched that allowed Oculus games to be played on Vive, that the CEO or the CIO or somebody from Oculus stated, you know, we don't mind if people are playing it on other headsets as long as they're buying it from the Oculus store. As long as they're paying for our products, then we're okay with it. But then all of a sudden there's this kind of change in pace and almost a complete turnaround to that thought process.
Yeah,
where now they're putting in constant hardware updates so they can block out the Revive crew. And what's funny is, since they're hackers and code monkeys, they keep making a new version of it to the point where they've actually cracked the DRM for Oculus games.
Yeah, Oculus has kind of done a complete 180, like you said, on that. They're now actively trying to make it to where people can't play their games on other headsets, and that, too, is kind of why you're wasting your money. You're going to put this block out here that keeps people from playing shit on the Vive, and not 6 hours after it's been put into practice, someone's already cracked it and found a way around it. That's a losing battle you guys are fighting. Sorry, it just is. Anyways, that does it for the VR side of things, but hey, you know, I still don't know if either one of these two headsets are going to strike it big. You also have Razer getting into their VRs with their VR headset. Yeah, the PlayStation VR coming out later this year, and I can almost guarantee you someone's going to find a way to make that be able to hook up to a PC.
Mm-hmm.
It's an exciting time if you're into the VR stuff. I know I am. I'm looking forward to getting it all in my hands and taking a look at it all. But right now it is a bit of an untested idea. So give it a year and we'll see where we're at.
Pretty much. I wouldn't want to buy the first. I'm not a super early adopter, so I would never want to buy the devices as they are right now. I'm gonna wait for like the Vive 2 or whatever the first major hardware update is. So I'm sure it's gonna be way better. Because I know a lot of the complaints right now is that it's a little heavy and it looks good, but you know it's tough to be on it for a really long time. So I think that first hardware update is gonna be right where I'm hopping into the VR train. Also, hopefully the price comes down.
By next year, I expect both those systems will be $100 cheaper, if not more. That's just a gut feeling, but I think that's what's going to happen. OS VR is worth a look, says DJ Cyanide in chat. Is that what Razer's product is going to be, their VR device?
Yeah, that's the Razer. Well, I think it's open source is what it's supposed to be. Open source VR.
Okay, I'm just saying if someone from Razer was watching and they wanted to send us a bunch of free OS VR devices, that would be awesome, and we'll definitely try them out on the show.
Yeah, dude.
That's that. That's more or less what we got for VR at the moment. It's super interesting. I like hearing about this stuff and the different ways it's all branching off and pathing off into the consumer, but we'll see how that goes. Other news that came out from last week during E3 that really necessarily wasn't gaming is that the Scorpio kind of surprised everyone at Microsoft's conference. It wasn't expected, most of all by Sony. Sony themselves said they were surprised that Scorpio was announced. This article is going to be via The Guardian, specifically the US version of The Guardian. In an interview with Andrew House, saying that PlayStation 4's Neo console isn't ready to show off yet, and Sony will wait until enough content is there to illustrate its benefits, while Microsoft came out swinging, saying, hey, here's the Scorpio, this is what it's going to be. While speaking with Andrew House, CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, quote, the point of confirming the existence of PlayStation 4 Neo and the bare bones of the plan last week was not about disappointing the fan base, who would obviously come to E3 with high expectations of all kinds of announcements. And from past experience, the worst thing you can do is disappoint and pull the rug away from people. That's why I think we went out last week and said, yes, it exists, but don't expect to see it at E3. Yep. I think it was the right thing to do. So he's essentially saying the reason why we didn't come out and say, hey, here is the PlayStation 4K is because they didn't want to date it and then have it pushed back and delayed, and they didn't want to go, here's this thing. It's going to be 2 years before you get thing. So when Microsoft came out and said, hey, we got Scorpio around the corner, House said, quote, I was surprised by the step of announcing something over a year ahead of time. The dynamics of a tech industry are such that there is a much heavier emphasis on immediate gratification than there was. This can be very clearly summed up by the fact that Fallout 4 last year was announced 6 months before it came out. You're starting to see this big backlash of shit being announced 2-3 years in advance, and then after 3 years come by, it gets delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. Look no farther than, The Last Guardian, for Christ's sake.
Well, now I have another thought on this, and I kind of touched on this last week, but I think one of the other reasons why PlayStation didn't go into talking about the Neo or 4K or whatever they're going to call it is because of the pacing of their conference, the way they had it laid out, and how they had it so focused on software, that watching the Microsoft conference, it was good, and when the Scorpio stuff happened and the Xbox Slim stuff happened, it's interesting, but it really slowed down the pace of it. And people will still be a little cheering, but they're not going to be as overzealous excited as they are when there's just new stuff. And since everything is so far away, I think it was kind of a good move on Sony to just kind of put it on the back burner. Like, we're going to talk about this, and next year when we don't have the VR coming out, and we don't have all these other games coming out, that's when we're going to want to talk about the Neo. That's when we're going to make the big hype, because we'll be able to have a bunch of time to push. We're not wasting resources on anything else, and this is what we're here to talk about.
I don't even know if it's going to be next year. You have Gamescom and the PlayStation Experience, which I think you're probably going to be down to go with me again this year, where they can talk about this to the hardcore crowd and not get drowned out in the E3 noise. I will agree with you. Sony's conference was definitely faster paced than Microsoft's was, and they wouldn't have had room to actually talk about the detailed specs of PS4K. In fact, Sony's conference was just over an hour, and there was less than 10 minutes of talking combined, which is just unheard of for a press conference. Whereas Microsoft was a lot more of a traditional conference, and it made sense to have that Scorpio talk in there, and it flowed with the rest of the conference.
Well, if you think about it, because you went to the PlayStation Experience last year, and the Sony stuff felt more like that. They were just there to represent the brand. They were get people really excited, and I think they're almost using their own conference as like a test marketing base to kind of see how the fans react and how they can do things. Because like the PlayStation Experience felt a lot different than their E3 conference or the other things that they put out.
Yeah, it was definitely designed to be, when you go to a movie theater and you spend the first 30 minutes there watching previews of movies, that's what Sony's going for now with their stuff. Only instead of movie trailers, you're seeing game trailers. You don't need someone in a suit talking to you about the hardcore specs and details of stuff. That can be saved for an actual tech conference, which is not what E3 is anymore. It kind of started off that way. It's not that anymore.
They don't need to talk about rendering styles and we got this many polygons, because no one cares anymore.
No one cares at all about that. If you want my take on why Scorpio was talked about at the Microsoft conference and PS4K wasn't at the PlayStation conference, and why Scorpio is being announced so early, I think this is because this is Microsoft ceding the current battle of the console wars to Sony. They're more or less saying, yes, we are doing great with the Xbox One, and they are. Make no mistake about that. Xbox One's selling very well. It's just the PS4 is just beating its ass when it comes to sales numbers, I believe by a 2-to-1 margin on all guesses for the most part, all educated guesses, since we don't have hard numbers to really go on. And Microsoft is going, okay, we're laying it down. We were beaten this time. We're going to go ahead and start opening up the next shots for what the next war is going to be, which is this not quite full console jump, this 0.5, the 4K jump.
Console 0.5.
That's what they're already gearing up for. And they're coming out saying, okay, you win. You're not going to win next time. Here's the first punch. What you going to do about Sony? And Sony looks a little bit on the defensive now by not having any information of the 4K at E3 this year. Yes, it wouldn't have fit in their conference, but they don't have an answer to what Microsoft said at the moment either.
Oh, where's Xbox's answer to the VR? I mean,
well, that's coming. Remember, they inked a deal with. Crap! It was either Oculus or Vive. I think it was Oculus. They have some kind of agreement that's going to eventually lead to VR coming to the Xbox just through a third party.
Eventually, blah blah blah. I mean, I get it. And I understand what you're saying. I just think that Sony's focused more on their proprietary VR coming out.
I think so, too. And we're going to see a lot more of that, I think, at Gamescom, because the VR is coming October 13th, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Plus, it doesn't matter too much, because no one's going to be buying a Scorpio or a Neo anytime soon, because you're going to have to upgrade something else before you buy either one.
And that is demand for 4K TVs, David. Thank you for bringing us to our next topic. Speaking with Eurogamer about Scorpio, Xbox head guru Phil Spencer said, quote, "The Scorpio is not going to do anything for you if you don't have a 4K TV. The Scorpio is designed for a 4K console, and if you don't have a 4K TV, the benefit we've designed it for, you're not going to see. Clearly, you can buy a Scorpio, and if and when you decide to buy a 4K television to take advantage of the increased performance, obviously the console will be ready for you." Sorry, that's read a little bit out of context of the rest of the article, which makes it sound kind of stilted and jilty. But what he's essentially saying is Scorpio is solely meant for 4K stuff. If you don't have a 4K TV, and not many of us do at the moment, though they are getting very cheap comparatively speaking, go with the Xbox One S if you want to buy an Xbox One. He is just flat out saying this is not going to be that. You're not going to get any benefit from it.
And I mean, it makes sense. It's a 4K console. You need a 4K TV or 4K monitor, and people that play video games, console video games, probably don't play them on a monitor.
What I think that this also kind of addresses too is that the games that are coming out later on both consoles really aren't going to be dramatically different between the two, except for the resolution. I know they've hammered that home, saying every game that comes out for the Scorpio will be playable on the Xbox One and the Xbox S, and Sony has said the same thing about the 4K, whatever they're going to call their system, in the PlayStation 4. But I'm kind of a skeptic. I always go, yeah, you say that, but... However, hearing this specific quote and him coming out straight out saying, if you don't have a 4K TV, don't bother, to me kind of just hammers home of, okay, maybe they're not just going to dump this current generation of consoles for whatever's coming out in a year.
Well, the other thing that they talk about, especially in this little article, is that he's very focused on saying that the Scorpio, the Xbox One, the Xbox One S are all going to be the same family, the same console generation, which means that every game released is going to work on all three. There's going to be no significant hardware changes made to the games, and it's almost sounding like they're going to want their games to be built more like a PC game where it's just got specs, where you put the game in, it detects which version of the Xbox console you have, and it'll automatically upscale or downscale depending on what you put the system in. Since people are already doing that for PC games anyway, it's not too much of a jump.
That would be interesting to see if console games start getting option menus like you see in PC, to where you can check, okay, I want the higher resolution, but I'm going to sacrifice.
I honestly don't think that will ever happen. I think they're going to actually just build it into like an update or a patch, or your system reads the game and knows what settings to run it at. Because when they do that, when they give you the full options menu, then it's going to turn off a lot of console players. A lot of the reasons people buy consoles in the first place is so they don't have to deal with that shit. They want to put a game in, they want to turn it on, they want to play it, they don't have to think about an options menu, they don't want to go... Because tinkering with settings is a PC thing. That is a pure master race problem. And it's going to need to stay that way, because if they release a game like that, no one's going to want to play it.
That's one of the reasons why I don't necessarily trash consoles when it comes... Because I think we're both PC master race guys here. and I think that the people in our audience currently are too. But I don't shit on consoles either, because I get there. It is a fucking bitch to deal with PC issues when you have a problem. When your computer won't fucking run a game, it is frustrating to all ends.
Well,
And
just
one thing,
remember, like, think of when Batman came out, the last Batman game, and how
absolutely.
that was a fucking train wreck on PC and got 10 out of 10s on Xbox and PS4.
Yeah, consoles are, you're not going to get the super high performance, but they're geared to a different audience. There are people who are just like, fuck it, I don't care. I just want to put game in machine and have machine play game. So, yeah, you're probably right. They might not actually have those
I like the way
detailed
Disco
specs
put it
on
in
there.
chat. They are a need. Consoles are a need in the industry.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole bunch of people that just need it. It's easier.
And there are a lot of people, when you start talking about, well, did you update your drivers? How about you turn on ambient oculation? And their eyes just glaze over. I don't care how detailed you can get into describing, this is what this does, this is what this does. They just tune you out and they go, well, why don't I just get this and I can push the button and play the game.
Although the funny thing about all this is, obviously, as we go, consoles and PCs are starting to blur the lines more and more and more. And I know a lot of the console guys don't necessarily want to deal with all the settings, but maybe they want to deal with some of the accessories.
Exactly, and that brings us to our next topic, David, about how the Xbox One might be getting mouse and keyboard support.
Finally.
In this article
I
here
just need to say that.
In this article here from PC Gamer, Phil Spencer, again speaking, says, quote, I keep talking about it in the press and my platform keeps shaking their head because they, and he kind of trails off. Truthfully, in our dead cats modes, now keyboard works. Mouse support is a little bit further away. I say it because I know it's not years away. It's more like months away, and we don't have an exact date yet. So this is more or less Phil Spencer coming out and saying, yeah, guess what? Mouse keyboard support's coming. This fits right in with their Play Anywhere motif, where you can buy a game on
cross-platform, cross-buy, whatever.
Yeah, we can buy a game on the Xbox One and you get the free Windows copy of it downloaded, which is fucking awesome. But the biggest thing that this opens up is the elusive MOBA. Because you really can't do League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm or Dota 2 on a console yet. You just can't. A controller does not have enough buttons.
I'll agree with you there, but you know what this really does? It really skews with those Halo leaderboards. You need some PC kid to sit down with a mouse and keyboard and just start stomping fools into the ground.
That is something, that is a debate I will say is irrefutable. A mouse and keyboard is far more accurate than any controller out there, and the people who say otherwise are just ignorant. Just flat out. There's no two ways around that. But yeah, they are turning into, you know what this is? This is the successful version of the Steam machine. This is what Steam tried to do. They tried to make the PC console, and it kind of fizzled out for them. It didn't work too well. This is Sony and Microsoft coming out, or mainly Microsoft in this case, coming out and saying, oh, we'll just make the console PC.
There you go.
And they're more or less turning into less consoles and more I don't want to say media devices because that sounds fucking pretentious, but you put it the best. Those lines are getting blurred.
Yeah.
So now your Xbox One is slowly going to turn into a low to mid range PC, and I'm not saying that disparagingly to say low to mid range, because it's still fucking $400, but that's a good I was going somewhere that I've lost it. Hold on.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people that'll use a console in place of a PC. There's plenty of people that'll have, like, maybe their work laptop or a school laptop or just a little Chromebook or something, and that's all they need. They browse the internet sometimes. But they hop on their console, they hop on their Xbox, their PlayStation to watch Netflix, to watch Hulu, to watch Netflix, to watch Twitch, whatever they want to do, because they have all those options now. Adding mouse and keyboard support, then you could start using your TV to browse the internet and whatever else you want to do.
Not only that, I finally figured out a way to say what I was trying to say. $400 sounds like a lot of money for what I would describe as a low to mid-range PC. But $400 of a PC gets you a very shit PC. For $400, you get a lot of bang for your buck. Especially when I can drop $2,000 on a PC easily if I want the best of the best shoved into it. So for $400, you're getting a budget PC, and that's not bad. at all, especially for people who don't want to deal with all the problems we were talking about earlier. Adding mouse and keyboard support just makes it even more compatible with what's already out there that's been within the realm of the PC player only. Mainly MOBAs, MMOs, and real-time strategies, which all three of which Microsoft are trying to ink deals with Halo Wars 2, possibly League of Legends with mouse and keyboard support, and then they're also doing their there's a deal, I believe, trying to be worked out with Final Fantasy 14 to get that game on the Xbox One.
That's pretty cool.
Just a rumor right now. I don't have any full details on it, which is why it's not in the show.
You know what else is cool about all the MOBAs and all that stuff?
What is cool about all the MOBAs and all that stuff?
Watching other people play them.
Yeah.
Or watching two talking heads talk about video games for an hour.
No, that's not cool at all. In fact, that's the worst thing you could possibly do with your time, especially with a show like this when the host can't even say a sentence right.
That's true. But you know where you'd go to do something like that?
Yeah, I was about to say, there is one platform that gives us all this chance to where everyone can be a star for 15 minutes, and that's Twitch. And Twitch has a little bit of a problem. In that, well, they have a couple problems, but this one specific I'm thinking of is the problem with viewbots.
This problem is something that we should have thought of a long time ago. Why don't we have this shit?
Twitch
so
has a problem.
You guys know what viewbots are? Y'all in chat? You've probably heard of something like this. But basically, there's these companies that'll make viewbots, which are just bots, like spam bots or whatever you want. They'll just watch your channel. They'll hop in. They'll say random things to dialogue. They'll chat with people. They'll do whatever they want. But they also increase your view count. And, you know, if you're on Twitch and looking at stuff, you'll notice that things are sorted by view count. So you can go and get a whole bunch of bots and increase your view count, which gets more real people to watch, which means your channel's more popular, which means you can make some more money, which makes people like Twitch mad.
In fact, if I didn't know better, I would say someone that was in chat earlier today was a viewbot with just the way he was interacting with everyone else currently watching.
Dude, I was waiting for that Die Hard trivia, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what happens when that happens. That really only makes sense if you're watching us live on Twitch right now. Sorry, guys.
Suck it, YouTube.
So yeah, it's fucking things up for people because people are able to pay these third-party companies to send a bunch of viewbots their way, and they get money from Twitch illicitly because Twitch gets money from ad revenue, which in turn they use to pay out for subscribers. And if it's just a bunch of people, fake people watching the ads, advertisers start pulling those ads. I mean, Twitch loses money. It's bad all around. You're essentially cheating the system, as it were. Normally, Twitch has ways to deal with this stuff. They go suspensions and the like. However, they announced another way that they're going to try to deal with it. In this blog post here from Matthew DePietro, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Twitch, it goes on to talk about how viewbots fuck with Twitch, like we said, and that they are now, quote, taking public legal action against 7 of the most active sellers of viewbot services. There'll be a link to the lawsuit down at the bottom if you're watching us on YouTube. Long story short, they're going after the guys who sell them, not just the people who are using them now too. I don't know how successful this lawsuit's going to be, but we'll see how it shakes out in court. David, what's your take on
it? It's kind of the standard practice thing they need to do. They've found viewbot services and they need to sue them because it's violating their terms of service. I mean, it's not even necessarily like a legal decision that they made that I have an opinion of one way or the other. It's more of this is when you're running into a point where you actually need to pursue legal action because they're screwing with your terms of service, which can screw your viewership, which is taking money, which makes people all mad. And some lawyers saw this and said, hey, you guys, are you seeing this viewbot thing? Because we should be suing somebody.
Here's the thing. Neither one of us are lawyers, if you couldn't tell. But I don't know how... I don't think Twitch has a leg to stand on here, unfortunately, because a third-party viewbot seller, how can you hold them accountable for what someone does with their product?
It's true. What if they're taking the viewbots and using for YouTube?
Yeah.
Like the YouTube Play or whatever it's called. Or, man, what? Fusion? What the hell is that other video streaming service that we talked about a million years ago that could do 4K?
No one cares.
That we're not on for some reason.
This is very reminiscent of when the Motion Picture Association tried to sue makers of VHS tapes back in the 80s because they said, oh, this promotes piracy and people are recording shit and selling them. Well, good luck with that.
I didn't necessarily say they're going to win. I'm just saying it's something that they felt they needed to do.
Yeah, I don't like viewbots either. I'm just saying this might not necessarily be something they can win. I don't even know if they have a ground to stand on here.
At least this lawsuit doesn't make me angry.
No, but other lawsuits do. And this is one of those stupid-ass copyright things where it turns out, yes, you can own a word, but maybe not. I know that wasn't necessarily the most graceful of segues. Deal with it. It's been a long day.
So in the conversation of lawsuits, and especially shitty lawsuits, No Man's Sky finally settled with Sky so they could keep the last word of their name.
And it's fucking stupid.
Now, the fact that most of you might not have even heard that that was a thing that was happening isn't really surprising, because they didn't want to talk about it because it's stupid as shit. So Sky is a satellite television broadband service in Europe, and they own the word Sky. No fucking joke, they own the word Sky. And they were suing No Man's Sky for the use of their name.
Yeah,
It's kind of ridiculous because it's also not the first time they've done this.
Yeah,
They've
they
done
did
it
this to
before, and they've
Microsoft
won.
before too, I believe, with Microsoft
Yeah, so-
OneDrive.
Microsoft OneDrive used to be called the Microsoft SkyDrive. Sky sued them, won, and they had to change their name. There was a couple other things that this happened to as well, which led to a lot of jokes that No Man's Sky was going to be called No Man's One, since a lot of the companies actually changed Sky to One. There's a few more examples. I just can't remember any of them. But that happened back in 2013. So this company just kind of sits around, waits for someone to use the word Sky, and then waits for whatever that property to get popular enough that they hear about it, and then sue them for money. And I almost guarantee they're doing the thing where they don't really care if they win or not. They don't really care if the person uses the name or not. They just want to sue so that the other company can say, fuck it, and settle out of court, and they can get some money and go back to their day.
The article here, that's via the BBC, says Sean Murray in his studio, Sean Murray being the head of Hello Games makers and No Man's Sky. Sean Murray in his studio has endured, quote, years of secret, stupid legal nonsense, end quote, after the broadcaster Sky said the game's title infringed on its trademark. We finally settled with Sky. They own the word Sky, and we can call our name No Man's Sky, he tweeted. The game is expected in June, delayed to August, etc., etc., etc. This just shows how fucking stupid copyright law is. And I am right of Adam Smith when it comes to economics. I am like fucking Ayn Rand rolled up with Ayn Rand's more attractive cousin. When it comes when it comes to capitalism, I am all about laissez-faire, free market, invisible hand, insert whatever fucking conspiracy theory term.
Yeah, dude, we've all seen your screen name. You don't need to keep talking.
But even I have to step back and go, what the fuck is wrong with copyright that you can trademark the word Sky?
And then sue people for using it.
There's something wrong there. I mean, copyright law is kind of weird anyways, though. This is why you have Bethesda suing Mojang over the word Scrolls because of Elder Scrolls and the Mojang's game Scrolls, which doesn't exist anymore. And Bethesda even came out and said then, hey, we don't fucking want to do this, but we have to do this because of the way it works. It's one of those cases where the law has not caught up with technology, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse as time goes on.
Well, yeah, and there's also a whole bunch of companies that literally just make their living by suing people for copyright law and hoping to settle out of court.
That's
Literally,
that's what Interplay does now.
Yeah, we've had
Interplay's
that
a patent
conversation.
troll.
That's all they do. It's flipping ridiculous, and it drives me literally insane.
But yeah,
I got a gray spot in my hair. It's because of all the copyrights.
Right, I'm sure it is. That explains that. I mean, No Man's Sky is still coming out. I would be very curious to know what was settled in this dispute. I'd want to know if they have to pay Sky TV any money. I want to read the particulars of this. I'm very curious to know how this got settled out of court. And I hope it's not them having to pay Sky. I hope it's a judge went, this is dumb.
But I almost guarantee that the whole reason this happened is because No Man's Sky got big enough, they got popular enough with so much swing behind it that Sky's like, oh, these guys are going to make some money. Let's get some of that.
What if No Man's Sky boots up and at the very bottom you see brought to you by Sky TV? Sky TV, the #1 satellite distributor in Europe. Like that's like, or you get to the center of the universe and it's just this giant Sky broadcasting tower or something like that.
That would actually be kind of funny. Not if they did that because of Sky, but they did that in spite of Sky.
Sky.
Like, I mean, there's like a bajillion planets in the game, right? And it's impossible to explore everything. So just somewhere in the code, they just throw in that there's like a 0.0000001% chance that you'll get this random spawn of like the Sky Broadcasting Tower on a planet.
Actually, what I would like to see is, because people can go out and name stuff when you discover something, just a bunch of plants called Fuck Sky 001, Fuck Sky 002, and or like just insert Sky whatever, Sky,
Oh, yeah.
like just start using the name left and right throughout the game just to fucking infuriate them. But
I
yeah,
like
the problem is we won't really ever know the details of what happened here, because this stuff gets locked behind non-disclosure agreements and lawsuit threats if
Oh
you
yeah,
mention it,
it's some internal document that we're never gonna hear about.
which is a
Besides
shame,
this.
and I hate it, because that's also happened with something else recently, and that's Allison Road. Now, last week, or maybe the week before, we talked about how Allison Road was just suddenly canceled. Allison Road, for those who don't know, was the kickstarted PT successor trying to bring a survival horror in the vein of PT to the games, and it went under. The lead of Allison Road came out and said, "Hey, sorry, this didn't work out. We had to cancel it. More details in the future. We'll address the post." Well, they did address the post on their Facebook, and it really doesn't say much. The Facebook post says, "Hi all. After a long consideration between Team 17 and ourselves, we have reached a mutual agreement to end our collaboration on publishing Allison Road under Team 17's game label. Sometimes things pan out differently than expected, as game development and publishers have so many layers of complexity. We would like to especially thank everyone for support throughout, and it has and always will be appreciated." Here's the thing. If you think that doesn't give too much information, it's because it doesn't.
Mm.
Another
what's
publication asked...
Jumping really fast.
Go ahead and jump in.
Is the fact that we're talking about this fact that Team 17 and the Allison Road kids broke up, and didn't we just talk about Team 17 taking over publishing last week? Wasn't that news last week?
That was news last week.
7 days later, they're like, this isn't going to work. Sorry, this game is still canned.
Now, another publication, VG 24/7, has an article with a statement received from Team 17. And notice how similar this sounds. In that statement from Team 17, they say, quote, "We have reached a mutual agreement to end our collaboration on publishing Allison Road under Team 17's game label." That's all that says for the most part. Both these statements use the same vernaculars, the same words to describe the same thing without actually telling us what happened. And we're never going to know. When both sides, who are no longer working together, have this one exact talking point, it is because it is NDA'd all to hell. There is a pile of red tape and paperwork coming out saying you will not talk about why we are separating at all. And we never will know unless one of these guys gets on like a drunken Twitter rant, which is a shame, because I want to know the behind the scenes of this stuff. I want to know, was it because Team 17 went, nah, we're afraid Konami might jump in and sue? Was it because Team 17 was trying to change things and the Allison Road guys didn't like that? Was it because the Allison Road guys were like, I don't know, we don't want to have milestones at these certain times, which is reasonable for a published task
Team
force.
17 try and buy out a controlling interest in the IP and cut out the Allison Road dev in order to make the agreement to actually publish their game?
Or were the devs just fucking dicks? We don't know.
Anything is possible when you're a dick.
I absolutely hate that we don't know, and I fucking hate that we live in a world that we can't talk about this stuff without someone getting sued. Because I'm super curious to see the behind-the-scenes stuff of this, because I think if more of this stuff was made public, people would be a lot more understanding of what... I mean... Never is information a bad thing. And Alpha Centauri said it best, from a quote from that lovely game from Sid Meier. "Beware he who would deny you access to information, for in their heart they secretly wish themselves your master." And because you have these legal, I don't want to say legal cover-ups, because that gives a more ominous term than what it is. But when you have these blackouts, when you have these we can't talk about it, when you have these NDAs, people start thinking wild, wacky shit. And wild, wacky shit leads to people doing wild, wacky shit. Like saying that game journalists are paid to give Mass Effect 3 a 10 out of 10 review. The reason why that conspiracy shit pops up is because of shit like this, when you can't talk about stuff. And it needs to stop. Brought to you by Planters. Anyways,
yeah.
I'm starting to go off on a tangent here, and I need
That's
need
fine.
to be brought back down.
I'll bring you back with another quote that's equally important to me that talks about the importance of information.
All
It's something that has always been near and dear to my heart. Information can be said another way, right? And that's knowing. And knowing is half the battle.
God damn it, David.
You are welcome, sir. G.I. Joe references. Dude, you know what G.I. Joe has? Guns. You know who else needs guns? The PlayStation VR. Segway, suck it.
And it's really, really bad because these guns...
Oh my god. It is the most Nintendo-looking plastic weird-ass bullshit I've ever seen in my life.
Let me bring up an article via IGN so you can take a picture of this.
We're gonna
PlayStation VR controller promises 1-for-1 precision FPS, which is great for the games like Farpoint and everything like that you saw during Sony's conference that rely on heavy first-person shooting mechanics. However, look at this monstrosity. Now, as a man who worked at a GameStop during the height of the Wii, we were bombarded with these fucking useless peripherals you slide the nunchuck and the Wiimote into, and it did nothing. This looks like ass, and this looks like one of those.
It drives me insane because PlayStation or Sony's brand right now, like the PlayStation 4 and all that shit, it's all black. And this is some weird ass white fucking nonsense gun, lollipop, pull, gag, squirt gun nonsense bullshit. Although I will point out that shooting games with the PlayStation Move from the PS3 was by far the most accurate, and the specific reason why I was able to school kids in Killzone 3.
Yeah, that was broken because of it, though, too.
So, the idea of having a game, and just barring how stupid this shit looks, let's take a step back and think of it conceptually. The idea of having a dedicated gun controller that you can use with the PlayStation VR that, you know, feels a little gun-like and allows to give you true one-to-one aiming in a VR space will probably feel badass.
Yeah, I do want to get a hold of it and play around with it before I completely knock it, but it's just so... It looks dumb.
It looks horrible. I definitely don't like it. It needs a buttstock, for sure.
Here's the thing, and this is when the rant comes in. This is how we're going to kind of end the show. Sony designed it to look this way because they are hell-bent on making this look as little like a gun as possible, despite the fact that it is meant to be used to represent a gun. And the reason why Sony is so terrified just to release this shaped like a gun is because the games journalist industry is fucking insane with guns right now.
Oh, we just gonna jump right into this nonsense?
I can't hold it in any longer. You want to know why I've been stuttering over my words the entire time is because this has just pissed me off so much. And I'm trying to speak slowly because I know I can get heated, and I know I turn into the Micro Machines man when I get heated, and no one can understand a word that I am saying. This started last week. I didn't want to get into it because last week was E3. That is a celebration of games. Now, this made worldwide news, and it's tragic, but right before E3 happened, there was a terrible mass shooting in Orlando, Florida, wherein someone, we don't know if it was based because of homophobia or Islamic terror or because he was a gun nut or anything else. That's not what any of this is going to discuss. What this is going to discuss is the reaction that the traditional games media had to E3 in the light of what happened the day before EA's conference. And that reaction was absolutely disgusting. Let me bring up a small smattering of what people were saying. Chris Palanti and T.C. Sotik, who work for The Verge, wrote a headline saying, "How do you sell violent video games after a tragedy? Pretend like it didn't happen." And they went on to bash EA for not addressing the shooting that happened in Orlando at a games press conference. To me, something that does not need to have that tragedy brought up at. Everyone is aware something horrible happened. I turned to that conference as an escape. If they want to mention it real quick, okay, fine. I have no problem with that. And all the other press conferences did. Ubisoft had Aisha Tyre mentioning it. I believe both Microsoft and Sony said some words about it. Bethesda just wore these rainbow-colored ribbons. Awesome, you can do that. But if a company chooses not to do that at a games conference, they should not be lambasted like that article there from The Verge goes into. You had Justin McElroy of Polygon saying, "The question I'm referring to is this. How many mass shootings until the game industry stops making shooting people seem fun? They're video games, Justin. They do not cause violence. They do not link to violence. This has been debunked multiple times." Kyle Orland of Ars Technica, "But will EA drop guns from this conference? Should they?" Mike Driver, another writer for The Verge, I believe. I'll have to double check that. "Let's make a deal to boo all games at E3 that feature real-world gun violence without any substantial qualifying of why it's there." Jonathan Blow, the developer of The Witness. "The lesson of E3. Game studios are working very hard to build fantasies about how cool it is to be a mass murderer." Bob Chipman, "Like, if part of your hype reel is how many real firearms you can use and how awesome gunplay is, maybe you dial it back this year." This goes on and on and on and on. Throughout, Twitter was bombarded Sunday and Monday about how evil video games are for glorifying gun violence, how you're fetishizing gun culture. Excuse me, I need to kind of take another breath here because I'm starting to go off. I have never seen so many people be so... I don't want to say dismissive, so patronizing, so arrogant, virtue signaling left and right, deriding the topic that they make a living off of covering than I did last weekend. If you are so upset that people love gun violence, shooting, war games, Gears of War, Halo, in video games, which dominate the marketplace, including stuff like fantasy violence like The Witcher and everything else that has violence in it, and you can't stand that you can't stand the violence in video games, and you think it fucking leads to mass shootings, you need to leave the gaming journalist business, because you have nothing useful to contribute when you keep suggesting that this is what causes these situations when it has been debunked over and over and over again since the days when Jack Thompson tried to do this shit in the late 90s and early 2000s. Stop. The far left has become just as insane as the far right has been, and it needs to end. David.
Damn, that's hard to follow. Shit, man. Okay, so I need like a tissue or something. But here's the thing that I thought was funny, because I mean, obviously you're pretty pissed about this. I think it's actually, well, while very annoying and very fucking stupid, I think it's funny because these are the same guys that 10 years ago, when you mentioned Jack Thompson, these are the people that we were using to defend video games. Because games journalism used to be about games, protecting gamers. So the idea that video games would cause violence would make an uproar in the gaming community. People would write about, there's no proof of that. Games are an escape. Games are an outlet. People that play violent video games will often not just go on crazy shooting things, because they actually have something that they can put their emotions into. They have something tangible that allows them to like let that little demon out of the bottle for a little bit, and then they can put it away. And this is something that a lot of people have talked about, and I feel it's something that people just all these crazy leftists don't necessarily think of. I'm stealing your leftist term. I don't know what the fuck anybody is. But the idea that games cause violence is the same as the idea that movies cause violence, or rap lyrics cause violence, or looking at a painting causes violence. It's nonsense. People cause violence.
Now, the argument to that
And
would
most
be...
of the time, it's crazy people.
Let me play the devil's advocate after going on that rant. It's going to seem a bit odd to do.
You can't switch sides. No, get off your shit.
They would say, we're not saying that video games cause violence. What video games do is fetishize gun culture and show guns as toys, and that it's acceptable to embrace guns.
So what you're telling me is that video games are the ones who do that. Fucking those bastards. It's a good thing that Hollywood and the news and just general television, music, and every other goddamn form of media that we have has nothing to do with guns ever.
Well, their response would be, wait. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, because their response would be, yes, there is a fundamental problem with American culture, and it needs to change at a sea level. It's because that we have embraced colonialism, and it's because we're a bunch of inbred wackos who cling to our Bibles and religion. That is what they will say. Just look at the people who are on the far left of this, like Jonathan McIntosh, I think it's McIntosh, the writer for the Feminist Frequency videos, who every day goes on and talks about how toxic masculinity and gun culture are the things that are holding back America every single day, along with how racist white people are, but that's another thing entirely. So yes, they will say yes. All
I want to say is I'm very, very upset that the world as a whole has managed to devolve into the fake society from a 22-year-old movie called PCU. Did that happen? Where is Jeremy Piven? What's Jon Favreau doing? Because they need to get out here and throw a goddamn party for these stuck-up motherfuckers.
Here's that idiocracy perfectly highlight what the future is going to look like. This comes from when you get to say things like this, and you can't say things like that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be allowed to say things like this, but the reason why they feel like this is the truth is because, and this is, I'm going to sound a bit conspiratorial here, but it is very much the truth. The traditional games media, which is a really weird term to use, figuring that games media has really only existed for 20 years at the most, is extremely left-leaning. And I don't mean, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal. I mean extreme left, like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders might be barely left enough for these people. I can think of two conservative names alone in traditional print media games journalism, and that's Colin Moriarty of Kind of Funny Games, formerly of IGN, and Eric Kane of Forbes. Everyone else is hard left. And what happens is that creates an echo chamber. And when you're just talking to your peers over and over and over again who all think the same way, and you're not ever exposed to outside ideas, you start all agreeing with each other and building on top of your own ideas without having them being challenged, regardless of how wrong or ill-conceived they may be. You have no one there to intellectually stimulate you, to make you think of, well, maybe what I said was wrong. Or conversely, let me think of ways to convince you that I am right and come to a different mindset. And I'm not saying you have to change your mind. What I am saying is this is what happens. This is the kind of shit that people say when they are surrounded by like-minded people 24/7 with no outside influence or experience, and they are very cliquish. They are very proud to kind of keep that mentality, that herd mentality around each other, which is why you see so many sites quote one another when they talk about their articles. Because it's all one big circle. It's a very incestuous group of friends. And I get that.
I was just going to say that this is just a continuation of the guns are bad circle jerk.
It's part of that. That's part of that. That's when you're part of that leftist group and mentality. And the same thing happens to the right. This isn't me attacking liberals or the far left. The far right does the exact same thing. This is why you have a bunch of idiots who are part of the Westboro Southern Baptist Church are going to picket the people who died in Orlando. Because these people were born into it. They fucking are hammered home every day by the same ideologically that gays are bad. And they can't think out of their little box. This is the same thing on the left. And this is what happens when you don't let people discuss things, when you come out and you're just friends, when you cultivate this culture feeding, and I'm going off on rant mode and it's just stream of consciousness coming out of me now, so I'm going to dial it back again. But this is what happens when you have that uniformity of thought, when you have all those ducks lined up to walk and talk and quack in the same way that everyone else does. You start going, guns are bad, and someone else goes, guns are bad. You know what? I think video games might cause gun violence. You go, you know what? That kind of feeds into what I already believe. So I'm going to agree with you and use you as the source of my story here. And it just starts stacking and goes way out of control.
So the short version of this is everybody's fucking stupid. Welcome to America, and enjoy your stay. Bring it down.
Yeah, and once again, I know this was targeting the left really hard, but it's because that was what was going on here. This was focused on games journalism, and that's what comprises the majority of them.
I'm quite a bit more left than you. That's why you're on my right.
Actually, I'm on your left if people are watching, believe it or not.
You are actually on my right, but I am on the right-hand side of the screen.
Fair enough.
Nice job looking at your screen.
But like I said, don't take this as a left versus right thing. This is an idiocy versus logic thing. This is what happens, like I said, when you fall into your perspective echo chambers. I really can't say anything more on the topic. I've already started going off the rails and started doing that stream of consciousness thing that I always fall into when I get heated up on something, and I hate that. And I'm sorry if I started rambling on there, but I mean, it's a fucking...
It's a little wacky.
Yeah, video games, man. Serious business.
It's a little... Video games are supposed to be fun and enjoyment, and then you're going to get all mad about video games for doing what they've been doing for the last, since they made video games.
That said, I do think this is one of the reasons why traditional media is dying so hard, and the YouTuber and the... like what we're doing is on the rise, even though what we're doing is hardly on the rise at all.
Dude, we're news for sure. I've watched news before, and we're like exactly the same. I'm not even wearing pants, just a shirt. We're definitely true news.
This is one of the reasons why Fox News became so popular, is because everything else was left-leaning, and then Fox came out, and they were right-leaning, like way right-leaning, and everyone went, oh, they agree with my mindset, and they all went over there. So you're seeing the same thing happens. That's why there are so many right-leaning people on YouTube as opposed to all the left people in print media and websites. I use print media. I'm just saying,
the only thing we're missing is car chases, and we're golden.
By the way, I'm using print media. They don't actually publish magazines. I'm talking like websites like IGN, Polygon, Kotaku, and other things like that. So,
damn, I'm not gonna lie. You said Kotaku with like the dirtiest fucking voice. You spat that shit out. I'm pretty sure you don't like them. I just got a theory.
I know people at Kotaku. Some of them are very, very pleasant people.
Cool.
And some of them are very, very, like I said, pleasant people. Some of them.
All right, that's fair. Well, without being mad at more people, let's shift gears a little bit, because we are here to talk about video games, not just people that talk about video games.
Absolutely.
So let's get into some video game news.
What's coming out this week, David?
We've been talking about all kinds of shit, but video games come out this week. Probably the biggest thing, depending on who you ask, that's happening tomorrow is Mighty Number 9.
It stinks.
Finally.
It's shit. Don't get it.
Finally.
It's fucking terrible.
Can we just talk just a little bit about the train wreck that is Mighty Number 9?
Go ahead, because I'm going to look up the Kickstarter page if it's still up and try to figure out how much money they made.
A shit ton. So Mighty Number 9 is the brainchild of Keiji Inafune, who you may know from Mega Man fame. He used to work for Capcom. Capcom kind of gave him the boot because, well, it turns out he's a little bit of a crazy person. And we've all figured out why. he started a Kickstarter for Mighty Number 9 really long time ago, 2013, I want to say, and actually made a shit ton of money, like 2 days, and made all of his funding goals and then some, got a bunch of stretch goals, and everyone's like, yes, we want another throwback Mega Man style game. And, they did all this cool stuff with getting the fans involved, and then news kind of stopped off, and then he suddenly announced another Kickstarter for a different game he wanted to make, while news kept kind of trickling for Mighty Number 9, and people got mad at the new Kickstarter, and so I don't know, like got pushed back a little, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. So just to give you an idea of how long this game's been going out, this game came out for, obviously, it's on Steam, it's on PS4 and Xbox One, but it's also on PS3 and Xbox and Wii U, the Nintendo 3DS, and the PlayStation Vita.
I have some stats for you. I'm looking at their campaign page for Kickstarter right now. While I don't see the exact date when it started, it does say if you pledge $20 or more, you will get a digital copy of Mighty Number 9, estimated delivery April of 2015.
Nailed it.
They had 67,000 backers pledge $3.8 million. And this is the piece of shit they got.
They didn't even want $1 million, right? They didn't even ask for $1 million.
I don't have the original goal in front of me, unfortunately.
It was like 800,000 or 900 or 850 or 750 or something like that. It was like, I know it was less than $1 million, and then they had millions of dollars. They're like, okay, cool. And it's got a lot of fan involvement. So there was actually a point in time where Capcom was working on a Mega Man game, I think Mega Man Legends or Mega Man Online, that they were using fan feedback, and they were building a Mega Man game that the fans wanted, which got people really excited. And then that shit was just canned. Just done, gone, fuck you guys, we're over it. And, that kind of led into the events that KG lived in. And so when he started making his own spiritual successor to Mega Man, people got really into it, because they're like, hey, maybe he's going to make the Legends games that we wanted, or whatever that game was. And then they got this, a game that's more Mega Man X8 than Mega Man X1, and it's just...
It's bad.
It's a mess.
It's mediocre at best. It's getting between 4s and 5s out of 10 between all the major outlets. This game is a nightmare scenario for Kickstarter, I think. Beyond just, we're canceling and keeping our money like the Doom that came to Atlantic City was. This is, no, you've got your product. Enjoy.
Yeah, it's literally just a game that's really, it doesn't bring anything to the table. Have you played a Mega Man game? Have you played a Mega Man X game? Then you should go back and just play Mega Man X1, X2, and X3. Then play a Mighty Number.
It's not even that it brings anything new to the table. It just brings... It brings the stuff that it promised. It just does it all poorly. White Husky Gaming, thanks for joining the chat, by the way. Good to see you. The animations are terrible. That god-awful, patronizing trailer that's insulting its fan base was terrible. The controversy that was surrounding all the delays and the claims of nepotism. This game has been troubled from day one, and it's no surprise that the final result is crap. I also think that this shows that creativity and a name aren't always enough to make a game. Look at this. Look at some of the stuff Tim Schafer has done. Sometimes you need the corporate overlord standing over you, holding the whip, going, hey, fucking get back on track.
Yeah, that's dumb. You shouldn't do that. The big thing here, I guess, is the lesson is, well, Mighty Number 9 has finally released. Chances are looking pretty slim for a Mighty Number 10.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Do we know if Red Ash was kickstarted, or was that like?
Oh no, that game failed for sure. People got so pissed when that was even announced that it just crashed and burned really hard.
Before I know this is new releases, and we should be going over what else is coming out. But there's one more question I want to ask before we get to what else is coming out this week, and that is, do you think Kenji Inafune has ruined his name with this game, or will he be able to kind of go away for a year or two and then come back with something new?
He's in trouble for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, after the Red Ash thing, I feel like people are going to be pretty mad at Inafune. Now, he's had a lot of other projects but like his other games, for example, he worked on Resident Evil, he worked on Onimusha. Those properties aren't his, and I don't think he's really going to be able to do anything even similar to those. And it seems kind of like the vision may have faded.
I think that he has burned definitely all of his goodwill. He is not a name that can sell a game anymore because of this, right?
He's made good games before, but now we're kind of starting to see, was it him really, or did he just kind of have a brainchild idea and then the rest of Capcom helped make a good game?
We'll definitely see what his future holds. I'm kind of curious to see where he goes after this. But yeah, I think that any goodwill he might have earned over the past few years for the stuff he has done is just now gone, and it counts for nothing.
Yep.
David,
Although, one thing I'd mention, because I did say that he worked on Resident Evil, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to do that again because Capcom just released Umbrella Corps.
Core.
Or whatever. Man, I don't like words. So here's the funny thing about Umbrella Corps is I first saw this game I think last December, something like that.
It was playing at PSX.
At the PlayStation Expo, exactly. And I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. It looks neat. But at the time, I was pissed because I wanted another true Resident Evil game. So I'm like, this is just some stupid team-based shooter. Takes place in Raccoon City. We've been there before. This is a little kind of nonsense that they're releasing this game that's not what the fans want right now. Lo and behold, we find out recently that Resident Evil 7 is a thing. It's
not only a thing, but something that they've been working on for quite a while, and they've just been stealth teasing it.
They've been not telling you about it, and it's a back to basic survival horror, true Resident Evil game. And because of the existence of that, because of the knowledge that that game is actually going to happen, and I'm going to get to play it at some point, Umbrella Corps actually looks cool.
Yeah. It is a budget title. I believe it's going to be on sale for $29.99 on Steam. Don't expect much from it. It kind of looks like SOCOM with zombies, and it looks as old as SOCOM. But
it sounds fun. So you play as like the Umbrella Corps guys running around, and you're doing missions, and you're shooting each other, and it's a competitive shooter. That's what you're doing. You're playing a competitive shooter. You just happen to be doing it in Raccoon City while surrounded by zombies and lickers and hunters and all the things that make the old Resident Evils fun.
Yeah, I mean, I would wait for reviews on it. I expect mediocrity at best. My gut tells me it's going to get a 65% Steam rating for user reviews. That's, like I said, just going on pure instinct, but we'll see how it shakes out.
I'm going to say it's going to do poorly early and then maybe get a somewhat solid fan base.
We'll see how it shakes out.
If it gets cheaper, we'll see.
Running a tad long, so what's coming out this week? What else is coming out this week, David?
Other new releases this week would be Grand Kingdom for PS4 and Vita. Well, since this is a game that's actually coming out on Vita, I will give you two guesses on what style of game it is.
Well, it's going to either be a JRPG or a visual novel.
And you hit it right on the first one. It is an, I believe, Atlas-released JRPG that looks as JRPG as possible.
I'm going to tell a little secret. I did the preview for Grand Kingdom for GameCritics.com at their NIS events way back when. So.
Dude, you can't just start flagging your other projects. All right, get out of here. This is GamePoints. All right.
I'm just saying. I knew what this was before you brought it up.
So anyway, if you were the kind of person that owns a Vita, you probably already knew this was coming out. If you're the kind of person that only owns a PS4, it's a JRPG. It's anime-tastic. There's a bunch of Japanese in it. Have fun. Canceled games this week were the Techomancer that got pushed back.
Yeah, it's next week now, apparently.
Did you ever play a game called Deadlight?
Yes, I like Deadlight.
Deadlight was a really cool game where it's a kind of survival horror zombie game, but it's a side-scroller, and you're basically avoiding shadows. It's got puzzles. It's got some cool mechanics, and it's getting a director's cut. It's coming to PS4, Xbox One, and PC tomorrow. So if you haven't played it, go look at it. Last I checked, it had 10 current players on Steam. So we'll see what tomorrow holds. Also coming out, MXGP2, the official motorcycle video game. Hooray.
Yeah, I saw this, and I didn't add it to the list because I was like, what the fuck is this? And just went over it. But you say people play this.
So people do play these games because the company that makes it, which I already forgot the name of, is an Italian company that's been making racing games and motorcycle games.
Did it start with an M or something?
For like 25 years. They have PS1 games. They made a lot of the old rally racing games. They've made all of the MotoGP series. So they actually do have a little bit of a following. Not necessarily right here, but definitely over in Europe, because MotoGP is huge there. And the last thing that's really coming out this week that anyone's going to care about is going to be the Fallout 4 Contraptions Workshop. New DLC for Fallout. Lets you build more crazy shit in your town. Welcome to custom robot nonsense.
This is that the Contraptions Workshop is the one that lets you build like Rube Goldberg machines, elevators, conveyor belts. You can
It's the one. It's the one that's making the game much more Minecrafty.
Yeah, which I don't. That was the worst part of Fallout to me, was the building stuff. I know that a lot of people love it, but I could not stand the settlement.
It's the reason I can't beat the game. I keep getting distracted.
You're just like, shit, this piece of wood can go and fill in that last door I need to make my town
need another
perfect.
Fucking screw!
I think that wraps it up. We've gone a little bit long. I'm going to blame that on me.
Dude, I have one last final piece of news.
All right, what is this last piece of news?
It's actually esports related.
Okay.
In the surprise upset of the last however many years that esports have been a thing, not necessarily esports, but a game has surpassed League of Legends in Korea. Can you guess what it is?
It's Overwatch.
It is Overwatch. Thank you, Disco King, for pointing that out. That's fantastic. Get wrecked.
Also, once again, not really once again, but going back to a topic talked about a couple weeks ago, South Koreans love the Overwatch porn. It is like 3-1 to the next highest country, according to like Pornhub stats. There's something about I don't know if it's because of
Can there be
because
a
of the
time
Blizzard thing
where I talk about Overwatch where you don't immediately start talking about porn?
No.
Like, are we ever going to get to that point?
No, because I've done a lot of research on the Overwatch porn.
Oh, surprise of the century. You get mad at stuff and, other stuff.
But yeah,
Any more beer?
I'm interested to see what Overwatch does with how they expand. I believe Blizzard has said they're going to add more heroes. They're going to add like a single-player story mode, which would be really interesting to see. And I'm kind of curious to see how they implement their competitive stuff they said they're going to add in. I don't have that stuff handy in front of me, unfortunately.
I just had to point out, chat just mentioned Reyes does Dallas, and that's fucking hilarious.
I'd watch it. Death comes.
Oh my god. Die.
It's thigh noon.
Calories here. And with that,
this has been GamePoints. Thanks for watching. If you're watching us live in chat, you can follow the show at GamePoints PC on Twitter. You can follow us individually. You can follow me at CapitalistPig21. David over there at Palshive Satori. You can give us a like over at Facebook. Just type in GamePoints Podcast. We pop right up. You can do the same at YouTube and subscribe to us at GamePoints PC for all of our past shows. You can also catch us live every Monday here at Twitch TV/GamePoints at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we will probably, hopefully, be less angry than I was not 20 minutes ago, because we usually like to keep things at least neutral, if not somewhat silly. Anyways, thanks for watching. This has been GamePoints, and we are out of here.